At the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
So I'm just giving you the answer to the question you're asking all night long. Why do they vote for Donald Trump? It's not always because they like him. No. It's because stuff...
Maher unleashed a fiery critique on Adam Schiff, ruthlessly skewering the California senator for his relentless and ultimately futile campaign against Donald Trump. The takedown was so scathing, it wouldn't be surprising if Schiff avoids Maher's show permanently. If you're into sharp political commentary like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay in the loop.
I think it's true justice. The only thing he cares about is himself and money, and going after the money is a way to bring about some real justice.
Adam Schiff kicked off the evening with his signature tirade against Donald Trump, branding him a self-absorbed narcissist who, in Schiff's words, cared for nothing and no one but himself. He doubled down on his claims, asserting Trump's guilt in no uncertain terms and declaring him utterly unfit to lead the nation, all delivered with theatrical flair. Schiff painted Trump as a dire threat to democracy, warning that his return to power would be nothing short of catastrophic. It was vintage Schiff, heavy on accusations, light on evidence, and dripping with political drama. But the real shock came later, a statement so bold, it's bound to come back to haunt him.
I don't share your pessimism about this or your pessimism about the general election. The reason why Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump is because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
Schiff pressed on with his anti-Trump tirade, throwing out every insult he could muster in a last-ditch effort to undermine the former president. But the moment that's likely haunting him most now, his bold, almost smug prediction that Joe Biden would cruise to victory. Fast forward to today, and that confidence has blown up in his face because Donald Trump is back in the White House. Schiff's boasts have aged like sour milk, leaving him looking foolish and scrambling for explanations. It's political karma in motion, and watching it unfold has been nothing short of satisfying. Meanwhile, his rant was clearly grating on Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith. Maher held it together, barely, but Stephen couldn't help himself and finally let loose.
Just getting tired of seeing so much stuff targeted in his direction, but somehow, some way he still survives. I mean, we're talking about a situation where he's still going to be the GOP nominee. He's still going to be running for president. You're President Biden. That's the individual that you're going to have to beat. 4 indictments, 91 counts. They ain't even bringing up the bankruptcies. Ain't even bringing up this particular issue with this civil case. And somehow, some way, he puts cats to shame because he clearly has more than 9 lives. I mean, come on.
Even before Bill Maher stepped into the ring, Stephen A. Smith had already thrown down the gauntlet. He came out swinging, taking direct aim at Adam Schiff and his political allies for their relentless, years-long crusade to take down Donald Trump. They've tried everything: media smear campaigns, endless investigations, recycled scandals from decades past, and over-the-top comparisons to history's darkest figures. They've called him Hitler, branded him a threat to democracy, and hurled every accusation in the book. And yet, against all odds, Trump hasn't just survived. He's thrived stronger, louder, and more defiant than ever. Trump remains the unsolvable riddle that Democrats and their media allies just can't crack. Every time they think he's finished, he bounces back, bigger, bolder, and more untouchable. Love him or hate him, Trump has become a political phenomenon they can't decode, and that reality is clearly driving them up the wall. The room had had enough of the anti-Trump tirades. Then Maher stepped in, and what followed was nothing short of a demolition spree.
The Atlantic put out an article last year, and it was called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense."
Right.
And talked about how we separate sports like the WNBA and the just because it's just socialization. This is insane.
I agree.
Okay. That's why people vote for Trump. Because there's stuff like that on the left that people just go, I know Trump's horrible, but separating by sports by sex makes perfect sense. And if you think it doesn't, you can't leave the country.
Maher didn't waste a second. He cut straight to the heart of the issue, telling Adam Schiff exactly why so many Americans continue to vote for Donald Trump. And he didn't hold back. Maher blasted the Democratic Party for its hollow policies, tone-deaf ideology, and increasing disconnect from the everyday concerns of regular people. One glaring example he pointed to, the push by Democrats to erase biological differences in sports by insisting that men and women compete in the same categories. To many Americans, this wasn't just absurd. It was an insult to basic common sense. Yet instead of listening to the overwhelming public backlash, Democrats doubled down. They dismissed legitimate concerns as bigotry and dug themselves even deeper into ideological quicksand. Maher argued that this kind of extremism doesn't persuade anyone, it alienates them. It pushes voters, even hesitant ones, straight into Trump's corner. Because when people are forced to choose between ideological chaos and someone who at least seems grounded in reality, they'll pick the latter every time.
Senator Schiff, given the ongoing political tensions and Trump's actions toward his critics, do you think President Biden's preemptive pardons turned out to be more important than initially expected? Let's first tell people what that means, preemptive pardons. That was pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned.
Wait, did Senator Adam Schiff just throw President Biden under the bus? Because it sure sounded like it. Schiff, who was knee-deep in the infamous January 6th committee, conveniently received a pardon for his involvement, along with several others on the panel who were quick to point fingers and assign blame for the Capitol chaos. But here's where it gets interesting. If the committee's actions were above board, if their conclusions were rock solid and rooted in justice, then why did Biden feel the need to issue preemptive pardons at all? Now Schiff is out here implying the pardon wasn't necessary, subtly suggesting Biden made a misstep without outright saying it. But the subtext is loud and clear. It looks like an attempt to distance himself from the political fallout, even if it means casting quiet doubt on the very president who shielded him. It's classic Washington maneuvering. Take the cover when it's convenient, then deny it when it gets messy. Schiff might think he's playing it smart, but the cracks are showing, and Biden's team can't be thrilled about the message it sends. Bill Maher didn't let it slide, either. He called out Schiff for the move and took aim at the mainstream media for their biased reporting.
The FBI came in and arrested the judge. No, I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York Times.
Well,
even Bret Stephens, a New York Times columnist, can't fully trust his own publication to report the facts accurately. Let that sink in. When people inside the newsroom are questioning the credibility of their own headlines, you know something is seriously wrong. This is exactly why Trump and millions of Americans have turned to independent and alternative media in search of the truth. The sad reality is that nearly every major news outlet in the country feels compromised, especially by the left. Once proud institutions, once tasked with holding power accountable, have transformed into partisan megaphones more focused on pushing narratives than reporting facts. That it's disheartening, to say the least. Journalism, once a noble and essential pursuit, has devolved into political theater. And every time another crack appears in the legacy media's facade, it only reinforces what many of us have suspected for years. If you want the truth, you have to step outside the establishment to find it.
Schools are popular now, even with people who aren't Catholic, because it's the last place you can send your kid to get an old school education. And they just tell the kids, forget about the Jesus stuff. Just, to them, that's okay indoctrination, as opposed to some of the other indoctrination that goes on. And also, the Catholics don't put up with bullshit. They take your phone. You have to learn your P's and Q's and your grammar and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I just don't understand, that parents don't have the whip hand anymore. Not that you should actually use a whip. And I don't have kids, so I don't know that firsthand, but every movie and TV show that has a teenager in it cannot be mischaracterizing this. And the kids just, they don't listen to their parents, they turn their back on them, they walk out of the room, things that would just get me shut down.
We all remember exactly when the unraveling began, when the Democrats fully embraced woke ideology and tossed morality and common sense out the window. That's when the cultural shift took a nosedive. Suddenly, children were treated like miniature adults, and parents, especially fathers, were reduced to clueless, outdated buffoons. Family TV shows became the battleground for this narrative: the dopey dad, the mildly competent mom, and the precocious kid who somehow knew better than both. It was subtle at first, but it spread like wildfire. What started as entertainment slowly morphed into indoctrination. The result: a generation of entitled, fragile kids who treat authority as a punchline and see accountability as optional. Discipline became taboo. Boundaries were blurred. Respect for family structure crumbled. The moral compass that once helped guide society was replaced by performative progressivism, a hollow show of virtue signaling with no real values behind it, and now we're living with the consequences. These cultural missteps didn't just weaken families, they helped cost the Democrats the 2024 election. Don't take our word for it. Just listen to what one of their own said in the lead up to the vote.
I respect the fact that you don't share my pessimism. I truly do. I understand where you're coming from. But I think that's part of the problem. I think the Democratic Party should share my pessimism. I think they should be on high alert. I think they need to treat him with the seriousness that it deserves, because you having a lot of faith in the American people. The man did get over 74 million votes. You've got people that are looking at Joe Biden. I'm not going to call him a cognitive mess or anything like that. That's very disrespectful. I would never speak about our president that way. But when you're 82 years of age, it's not offensive to say you're no longer a spring chicken.
Beyond their bizarre ideologies, Schiff and his allies spent years trying to convince the American public that Joe Biden was mentally fit to lead the country. Despite mounting concerns and bipartisan warnings, they doubled down, shielding him from criticism and dismissing the obvious signs of cognitive decline. They told us everything was fine. It wasn't up. By the time reality hit, it was too late. When it became painfully clear that Biden couldn't lead them to the promised land, panic set in. Their solution: Kamala Harris. In a desperate attempt to salvage credibility, they elevated her, only to realize they'd made one of the worst political miscalculations in recent memory. Her approval ratings tanked. Her public appearances became liabilities. Her so-called leadership only deepened the chaos. The party that once boasted about strategy had run out of moves. Now, they are stuck cleaning up a mess of their own making. At the end of the day, Democrats are reaping what they've sown, from pushing woke ideology and sidelining common sense to backing a clearly unfit president and fumbling with Kamala as a last-ditch option. In doing so, they've alienated the very voters they claim to represent. The frustration voiced by Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith is part of a larger awakening. Americans are done being gaslit. They are tired of media spin, political theater, and endless deflection. Trump's resilience isn't just about him. It's about a nation fed up with a broken system, finally pushing back. The left tried to control the narrative, but reality hit harder. And now, even their own voices are starting to question everything they once defended. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more sharp commentary and real talk. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.